you lost good. Wow.
How'd you
God damn it. The next time I talk about some of this stuff, you'll be in the back of my head. So thank you for that.
So, Michael's back with another video about conspiracy theories and critical theory, and I'm basically simply tired. There's a frustration to how all of these supposed theory philosophy heads on YouTube don't simply get things wrong, but they do it in a way that's counter to actually spreading the ideas that they're claiming to be teaching. It's a problem, and I'm gonna be blunt here. This video is not just wrong. I actually, at this point, am just gonna call it maliciously wrong, and I'm not using that word lightly. The last video I did, the response I did, I tried to be as kind as possible. I was a little harsh, maybe harsher than I wanted, but it's tough because at the time I was talking with someone who I understood to be a professor, an ex-professor who really cared about these things and studied under some of the people we'll even be discussing today. And it's difficult for me to not simply go, how do you make something like this? My first video, my first response, talked about how he took Jameson and he did this fundamental therapeutic misreading, this idea of the individual solution, that a Dr. House style diagnosis of things is nonsense. Now he responded, we had a conversation, and honestly, I was a bit excited even. It's nice to find people to engage with on these things. It's not easy to find people who care about this stuff, let alone people who are willing to talk about it. I was warned by many people that Michael probably wouldn't engage with me, and even after was warned that he wasn't actually engaging with my ideas, that he didn't deal with my critiques at all, that the whole thing was performative. But I don't care. I find it nice to be able to chat, and I do hope for the best in these things. In his first video, I said, and I will always say, that telling people who are politically minded, who care about politics, and who are looking at world events and saying things like nothing ever changes, nothing has ever changed, not only produces impotence in your audience, but it's an unethical way to make them dependent on you and have a parasocial relationship where you're the one who provides answers. Remember, to say that nothing happened does a secondary thing. And I get that it's kind of can be a joke, and it's a thing a lot of people I've seen on Let's Say, but to say that makes people look at that and go, well, if that didn't do anything, that's how people feel about it. It becomes an impotence creator. Because
and this is where I think I guess I just disagree there, in as much as, in that part of the video, I'm not like, so guys, this happened and then nothing happened. I think in that part of the video, I'm kind of like, and then now, one example I can think of here is the summer of 2020. There's a lot of protests that broke out in America after the police killing of George Floyd. We were still in the COVID era as well. At least where I live, there were some protests and marches where there was 100,000 people in the street, and it felt like we were doing something. We're going to change society, and we're standing up against, capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy. And then we kind of just started doing other stuff. We got back to normal. We kind of just, nothing really happened. It all stayed the same. In that part of the video, I'm not like, so guys, this happened and then nothing happened. Nothing really happened. It all stayed the same. I mean, guys, we are approaching the 20-year anniversary of the 2008 financial crash and the Occupy movement, and we're still just here.
And look, you can see behind me, I'm moving. I'm making this video before movers are here so I can get it edited and I can think through every point. I've spent days on this. At first I was really kind of heated and really upset. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm not going to become this hardcore pedant in the same way I was in the first video. I found this more sad than anything. This is painful. And it's painful because as he talks, his own words contradict themselves.
Okay, so let's start with the definition of conspiracy theory. that we can all agree upon, It's an explanation for an event or system which locates the nefarious motives of a secretive group at the heart of that event, often with an explicitly political motivation. And these theories usually offer a way more complex explanation than a more common sense understanding.
1 minute later.
The conspiracy theorist develops oversimplified and often paranoid narratives that explain mysterious and unknowable dynamics of economic and political power.
1 minute later.
But they get the facts wrong when they rely on overly complex and conspiratorial narratives to make sense of things.
The video's filled with this, treating knowledge of random facts as non sequiturs, like special things. I mean, okay, this line, I don't understand why it's even in here or how it's related to anything. What's the point said between those other things? This comment.
Also, say what you will about the Soviet Union, but they did put a woman in space way before we did.
Because yes, the Soviets did have the first woman on. They had all the firsts. Like, I don't understand this point as a thing. The first human, they orbited the Earth for the first time as a thing. They're the first animal, the first man to orbit, all of the first. They didn't have the first human on the moon, but they had the first landing thing on the moon and also the first remote controlled rover on the moon. It's just a weird aside. And it's like facts. I hate facts. And again, I could go through the entire video like this, but again, it's not a total critique. There's a couple things that is horrendous in a way that is important to me, because when you are doing philosophy, especially when you're ostensibly from an academic background, you're taking shit seriously, there's horrendous scholarship in this that I find really, really bad. And it's the kind of thing that people need to not do, and they need to see when it's done that it's called out. So for example, he quotes Frank Ruda here.
Now, in a recent essay on Frederick Jameson, philosopher Frank Ruda comes to some similar conclusions about the reasonable side of conspiracy theories. He writes that conspiracy theories are problematic manifestations of a rational demand, a demand of reason. This demand is a demand for orientation in a world that no longer allows for any, since the constitutive principles of its organization have become obscured. Ironically, conspiracy theories are the wrong form of doing the right and necessary thing.
But he goes on to say,
Ruda thinks that the conspiracist is doing the right thing in the wrong way. And that right thing is demanding a rational explanation for why the world is the way it is. One that relies on reason rather than paranoia or fantasy.
And really, Michael, if that's what you took from Ruda, I'm confused, because the rumors are that you actually were pretty close to the guy, maybe at one point or another. And what if I said, no, Jameson actually demonstrated that one can and must take paranoias in its conspiratorial dimension seriously itself as a form of rationality, that rationality itself thus has to be rethought historically, that for Jameson, even if conspiracy theories are entirely made up, there is truth in them. What if it's actually Ruda who said that? And I'm quoting him word for word in the paragraph that you're quoting. This is tough. I'd be mortified if I made this mistake. Ruda is not saying we need to be more rational. He's saying conspiracy theorists are rational. They're the same rationality as everyone else. It's not about sufficient rationality, as you're saying here, but instead that we have an absence of cognitive mapping tools to enable rationality to work as it has conventionally. Because it doesn't work like that. Conventional rationality, conventional reason is dead. That's Jameson's point, and Ruda's as well from the piece. Conspiracy theorists themselves are actually a symptomatic moment within the crises of the structural cohesion of everything, of, as you say, capitalism. But that you missed the point here is just strange to me. I didn't understand it, but it's the Latour quote that made me understand, oh, that's why. Because you're actually not reading the pieces you're quoting from. It's one of those things that's really important, because when you're quoting a piece, you should get it right. You hit a spot where you quote Bruno Latour to support your argument that conspiracy theory and critical theory have similar setups or are similar in any way. Here's the clip of that.
Well, according to French philosopher and anthropologist Bruno Latour, conspiracy and critical theory actually have a lot in common. He writes that in both cases, you have to learn to become suspicious of everything people say because they live in the thralls of a complete illusion. Then, after disbelief is struck and an explanation is requested for what is really going on, in both cases, again, it is the same appeal to powerful agents hidden in the dark, acting always consistently, continuously, relentlessly. So as he sees it, both types of theorists encourage us to look beneath the surface to see what's really going on.
And boy, you really made it sound like Latour is comparing critical theory to conspiracy theory. But he's not. That's not where the piece starts or the quote starts. In fact, the quote doesn't say, I'm comparing critical theory. That's what you're doing here is different. He says, and I quote, "Let me be mean for a second. What is the real difference between conspiracists and a popularized, that is, teachable version of social critique inspired by a too quick reading of, let's say, a sociologist as eminent as Pierre Bourdieu? Those are the two things he's comparing. Latour is not comparing critical theory to conspiracy theory. He's comparing conspiracy theory to what Michael does, popularized, teachable, quick-read versions of social critique. He's deliberately insulting people who do shit like what you're doing, which Latour doesn't do. The dude was like crazy kind all the time. He apologized for it at all entirely. But that's the thing. You don't actually source Latour. See, what Michael's doing is Michael's quoting someone else, quoting Latour. And that quote is actually unsourced. And that, kids, is why you actually need to read the primary material. What the fuck is this another person doing philosophy who doesn't read primary sources? Like, what the fuck? And it's important because you see how Michael says illusion in his quote. Now, he just copied and pasted it. He didn't actually check the primary. He didn't Google the quote. He didn't ask ChatGPT. He didn't do anything. All of these things which are exceptionally minimal effort. But saying illusion is kind of a big deal because it makes all of it wrong. It destroys the point of the actual quote because basically it's popularizing and simplifying the point that Latour's making. See, Pierre Bourdieu is a brilliant social theorist who wrote extensively about illusio. Not illusio. See, illusion is deception. It's born of the phrasing illudere, which means to play against someone, to trick someone, lies told, misleading you in a game. Think of it as bluffing, the illusion of success. I'm playing against you and I'm bluffing. Illusio from Bourdieu is real close, but he bases it actually in playing. It's not illudere, instead it's ludus as a root. This is the whole reason he writes the piece as he does. It's an illusion is a lie played against you, but that's the important thing he wanted to focus on. It's why he has this term. You have to be playing a game to be played against. Why are you playing a game? Bourdieu wanted to explore why people feel the game is worth it. Why are you being deceived? Well, it's because you're invested in the game that is deceiving. It's actually a really interesting, complex, but really cool way to talk about someone being invested in the thing that's tricking them, and that's part of it. So here we have Latour decrying how people oversimplify things, like Bourdieu's concept of illusio, in order to make it digestible for people, and by doing so, destroying any emancipatory potential for the tools being developed. Michael sources someone who did that very thing with the idea of illusio itself. So basically, yeah, this is art. This is art. Latour is being mean, insulting people who oversimplify social critiques to make them digestible and simplified and surface level. And here's the proof of how it works. Thanks, because it does. It works very well. The video is bad and worse throughout, but it's actually kind of a fantastic chance for us to build something, because critique is clearly not going to matter here. That's what these videos are not best for. What they're best for is building something. So we're going to talk about Latour, and I'm actually going to show you some tools to use when watching for some very specific things, some specific things in that Latour piece that Michael's quoting unknowingly. In it, Latour names what he calls the critical barbarian approach. You might have recognized it from a few other people I've talked about in videos here. The critical barbarian operates by fixating commentary at two positions, what Latour will call the fact position and the fairy position. Now, watch how this works in Michael's video. So position 1, the fairy or fetish position. Latour says, the role of the critic is then to show that what the naive believers are doing with objects is simply a projection of their wishes onto a material entity that does nothing at all by itself.
Now, Klein also notes that there's a parallel between the conspiracist and the neoliberal because they both see the world primarily through the lens of individual actions and not systems of economic and political power. You know, while the conspiracist might think that George Soros is the only one who's making life bad, the neoliberal might think that like Kamala Harris or Mayor Pete is the only one that can fix it.
See what he's doing here? He's positioning both conspiracy theorists and the mainstream liberals as naive believers caught up in fetishistic thinking. They're projecting agency onto individual figures rather than seeing the real structural forces, right? Michael gets to be the enlightened one, seeing through both illusions, sharing them with you, and debunking them as an idea. But then we have the second position, the fact position. For Latour, he puts it as, you, ordinary fetishists, believe you are free, but in reality, you are acted on by forces you're not conscious of. Look at them. Look, you blind idiot. Latour is pretty great. And just like that, as if showing what Latour's talking about, after that last thing, Michael flips. And in the next sentence...
But when we shift our focus to the more useful C word, capitalism, we're able to see that financial crises, energy shortages, and wars are being manipulated by the powerful in ways that harm society. According to Klein, this does not make you a conspiracy theorist, it makes you a serious observer of politics and history. Jameson and Klein both believe that the antidote to conspiracy isn't just debunking or fact-checking. It's analyzing society such that we can see how power functions under the capitalist system.
So this is remarkable. He debunks conspiracists for thinking powerful people are manipulating wars and finance, but immediately tells us that if we're smart, we can see that the powerful are manipulating wars and finance. The difference, of course, is Michael's magic version uses the word capitalism somehow. It's worth adding here that he quotes Naomi Klein here, but he's not. I mean, look, here's the piece that apparently all this is really from. And notice his phrasing.
But when we shift our focus to the more useful C word, capitalism, we're able to see that financial crises, energy shortages, and wars are being manipulated by the powerful in ways that harm society. According to Klein, this does not make you a conspiracy theorist, it makes you a serious observer of politics and history.
So here's the thing, Michael, professor, academic. Here's how citations work. You have to cite what you're quoting. Do you see where the quotes are in yours and also the book review of Gogarty's What We Do Is Secret, which isn't actually a primary source at all? Phrasing here is really specific. It's pretty interesting. The powerful. But this rubbed me the wrong way watching it. I love Klein. I don't think I've ever heard Klein talk about the powerful. It sat weird with me. So I grabbed my copy of the book before it went into one of these boxes, and sure enough, because plenty of events and situations, financial crises, energy shortages, wars, are indeed manipulated behind the scenes by powerful forces, and the effects of those manipulations on everyday people are intensely negative. Believing that does not make you a conspiracy theorist. It makes you a serious observer of politics and history. Yeah, Klein would take issue with you claiming she's saying that the powerful do this shit. That's her point. That it's the powerful forces. It's powerful forces. But if you don't actually read the book you're referencing, and you only read the article that's referencing it, get in these goddamn positions. You get the two parts of what Latour's talking about here, right? The fairy and the fact. One side treats objects or people as simply projections of human wishes. You are the one able to do everything. You are the king. You are the one who can make these things happen. Why aren't you better at this? The other side claims objectively powerful forces overwrite any agency that a person has, somehow negating you overall. You, the poor, stupid, the fools, are deluded about your agency. You're also deluded about your lack of agency. Good luck. The condescension here is staggering. Poor Kevin with his pipe rock theories. We can't blame these simple folk for living in a system that deliberately obscures the truth. If only we could change things, you fools. But you don't understand the mistake of your lack of agency. Ah, God. It's a lot, man. As Latour writes, do you see now why it feels so good to be a critical mind? Why critique, this most ambiguous pharmacon, has become such a potent euphoric drug? You are always right. Enter here, you poor folks. After arduous years of reading turgid prose, you will always be right. You will never be taken in anymore. No one, no matter how powerful, will be able to accuse you of naivete, that supreme sin, any longer. Better equipped than Zeus himself, you rule alone, striking from above with the salvo of anti-fetishism in one hand and the solid causality of objectivity in the other. Watch my videos. Learn to see through illusions. Understand the real forces at work. The naive believer is always the great unwashed, always caught off balance one place or another. Well, I maintain critical superiority, and this is what makes all of this philosophy content shit on YouTube worse than typical YouTube education content. If someone's teaching calculus or chemistry, they're dealing with relatively stable knowledge domains that are pretty set up. But a lot of these others, they take tools designed for collective political analysis and they turn them into content for individualized consumption. It's the Ozempic of knowledge. It gives you something to play with daily and understand daily, but in the end, the complex realities that created the problem in the first place never get dealt with, and you get fucked up again. Critical theory, the kind Latour actually advocates for in that essay, isn't about maintaining superiority over naive believers. Good God, it's not. It's about what Latour calls moving from debunking to assembling. The critic is not one who debunks, but the one who assembles. The critic is not the one who lifts the rugs from under the feet of naive believers, but the one who offers participants arenas in which to gather. This means stop positioning yourself as the one who sees through illusions. Stop treating theory as ammunition for critical superiority, and start creating spaces for collective analysis rather than individual enlightenment. Real critical work involves understanding how objects and phenomena are gathered and assembled, not explaining them away through social or economic forces, and also not through saying it's just the wealthy making choices. God, it means examining how problems are constituted, not just what causes them. It means tracing networks, associations, rather than asserting explanatory frameworks that just close out and bar any sort of participation. But most importantly, it means working within existing political movements rather than building audiences. It means developing analytic tools that emerge from struggle rather than academic theory. It means creating collective spaces for thinking rather than individual expertise. But I don't think any of these people will hear this anymore. He's stuck in the same place others are stuck, in this therapeutic framework that plagued the original Jameson video. But man, there's one more example of why you shouldn't use a book review for a book you're not actually talking about to cite quotes in a video that's unrelated and not a primary source. He invokes Alenka Zupancic to support his position. And he claimed,
and we can save our ruthless critical energy for the folks in power who are exploiting the folks who fall for conspiracies and then just use that to continue building their own power. And this is why Zupancic argues that the real conspiracy theorists that we need to worry about are the elites running society. You know, they know that the planet is dying and that the economy is unsustainable, but they keep pushing forward a false narrative that promises to hold it all together, even as we're just standing around watching it all fall apart.
Now, what if I said instead that the key mistake of conspiracy theories, a mistake to which we would have to respond in the following manner. No, it's even worse. The elites really are so crazy not to take the danger seriously. This is precisely why we should be truly scared. No, they do not know what they are doing. They have no master plan beyond keeping themselves in business. Zupancic is making the exact opposite argument from Michael Klein.
But when we shift our focus to the more useful C word, capitalism, we're able to see that financial crises, energy shortages, and wars are being manipulated by the powerful in ways that harm society.
Michael here is literally embodying what Zupancic identifies as the problem in the article that he's citing. He's doing conspiracy theory by assuming someone, content theorists like himself, have access to real structural knowledge, while others are trapped in mystification. He's presenting himself as the one who knows exactly what they're doing while treating everyone else as unconscious dupes of capital who just don't know the right amount. But those elites really do know. But to be fair, this shit works. He's got 3,000 Patreons. That's a lot. Good on you. You go get them dollars. That's great. But I keep coming back to the same question. Why the fuck does this actually get under my skin and make me angry? It isn't just that Michael gets theory wrong. So many fucking people get theory wrong. To me, it's because he's part of this broader phenomenon actively destructive to critical thought.